You read the title. Today I'm going to be power scaling a real life person and YouTuber known as the Hacksmith. So on his YouTube channel, Hacksmith makes a lot of very cool inventions, and also very deadly half the time. And since he has a warehouse full of this kind of stuff, I figured, hey, of all the real life people I could power scale, this would probably be the only guy. And so in this video, I'm going to be taking some of his best and most deadly creations and giving them all to him in a way that would actually be all usable at once, and also saying if this guy wanted to kill a billionaire, and the billionaire is at the top of a very expensive tower, and he has to get through all the guards from the bottom of the floor all the way to the top, would he be able to do it? Or at least how far would he get? So to fans of the Hacksmith channel, this first pick is going to be fairly obvious. It's going to be the power loader. If you aren't aware, the Hacksmith channel remade the entire power loader from the movie Alien. It's insanely strong, and I'm going to at least assume it can go somewhere around 20 miles an hour. This is because it went on a road where other drivers were driving, and I assume they wouldn't be too terribly rude to them by getting something that can only move like 5 on the road. Plus, then it would be about the average speed of a human being running, which gives it some pretty good speeds, at least for the strength it provides. But another great feature is that the power loader can be controlled remotely. This means that somebody on his team could remotely control this separately from him and not need to have themselves protected, while basically having 2 people up against the giant things in the tower of the rich person that I'm just going to refer to as Elon Musk. And additionally, in this section, I'm just going to add a little cliff note here about another remotely controlled thing that I don't want to delve very deeply into because I don't think there's as much to talk about. They also built a battle bot that, while it didn't work perfectly, at least would give him some assistance if it were controlled remotely. It could probably take out at least 1 guard. Next, I'm going to be moving on to something that they ironically took from Elon Musk in a way, their mechanized Cybertruck. They rebuilt the Cybertruck in miniature scale and loaded a bunch of weapons onto it. I think this would be a good way for him to eliminate like the first floor. Well, obviously he wouldn't be able to get it up any other floors, but I think this pretty solidly says that he gets at least one of the floors destroyed by this single item. And hell, they have a bunch of different stuff they loaded into this thing. If you want to look at all of the individual things, you can actually watch their video. But seriously, this thing alone is a solid threat, but its inability to go upstairs is kind of an issue for it. And hell, you could say the same thing about the previously mentioned power loader and battlebot. But all those things combined gives him a pretty solid destruction of the entire first floor's guards and whoever else comes down to assist. But once he gets up to the next floor, he's going to need more of his own personal artillery. So the first thing I'm going to mention that he has in his artillery is an Iron Man helmet that has a heads-up display and also allows him to see in the dark. This obviously gives him 2 benefits. One, he won't be held down by any light issues, meaning that if he turns off the lights in a room, he actually has the advantage. And it's also a metal helmet, meaning it gives him at least some protection from bullets. And I guess knives too, but mainly bullets. Now, you may be thinking, well, the eyes create light, so that means obviously they'd still be able to see him. Well, not only did the lights project outward, meaning that he would be mainly obscured except for those eyes, but actually there is some logic to this that I would like to explain. If you see 2 glowing lights come at you, you're naturally going to aim, due to your gun training, between those lights, because you're going to think, oh, that is the only defined place where you know where something is. This is also a bit of nature too, because a lot of animals' eyes glow, and when we were being hunted by them, we would aim between their glowing eyes in the dark, because obviously hitting something in the head is very useful, unless that thing has a metal helmet on. In which case, it's still kind of useful, but not as useful. Speaking of bulletproof, we're next going to be going over Hacksmith's next armor solution. He made bulletproof Mandalorian armor. Now, while this doesn't cover his entire body, it's at least a great place to start while plating him with metal. It protects a lot of his very vital areas and makes it so that he can't be harmed very easily. However, there will be one exception, being that he won't be wearing the Mandalorian helmet. Instead, he'll be wearing the Iron Man helmet I just mentioned, because he can't wear both. But you might be thinking, that doesn't cover his entire body. What's he gonna, how's he gonna cover up the rest of him? How's he gonna prevent other bullets? Well, that gets us to our next item on the list, his bulletproof John Wick suit. Not only will this make him look very dapper on the battlefield, but it's bulletproof, cut-proof, because it's made of Kevlar, which is used for both of those things. And additionally, as I said, makes him look very cool. Now, I do think he'd wear some of his Mandalorian armor over the suit, namely the shoulder pads. The chest part would be under because I think it would look cooler, the gauntlet bits, and all of the leg stuff. He will also be brandishing the holsters from this suit to store future items, although he won't be necessarily using all of the Mandalorian stuff, just specifically the armor except the helmet. Next up is a return to Iron Man, his Iron Man repulsor. I included this because it saws through shit like jelly. It's far better than any other flamethrower or gun he could possibly wield during this battle, and could definitely like puncture holes through people if it was there for more than like 3 seconds, making him, very strong. So basically what we've gone over is that, some of the lower tier lackeys, because obviously they're not going to put the guys with the strongest, biggest guns at the very bottom, I'd say he gets through a single floor just by having this item. It's probably one of the more effective items on his arsenal, and has at least 3 functions. First of all, it creates light, second of all, it lights things on fire, and third of all, it kills people. But next, let's move on to something a little more protective again. For their channel, they use technology to replicate Spider-Man's spider sense, which, while he can't wear the Spider-Man mask over his helmet, I'm gonna say he can alter some of the technology that he's using here for ease of use. So now he knows when someone's behind him or to either of his sides without having to look. This is good if anyone wants to make any physical attacks on him, although I don't think it'll help him dodge any bullets from behind, simply because I don't think his reaction speeds are that good, and even then he'd have to train with it a lot to get good enough to do that. Next up are another thing that I just simply think is cool. He has about 100 or so batarangs that I think he could fit into a bunch of pockets and throw at his enemies to have a bit more range without necessarily lighting things on fire. Ironically, this allows him to be sneaky like Batman because obviously the big-ass repulsor on his left arm creates a lot of fire and light, and it makes him a very obvious thing to hit. Meanwhile, these not only function to allow him to attack from the shadows and not be as easily seen, although the lights from his helmet don't help in that regard, but they're also a more efficient way than the giant repulsor to break through extremely durable glass, to stab people instead of outright setting them on fire and burning a hole through their chest, and lastly, it allows him to use his other arm to attack with range while his other hand is busy using the repulsor. Sort of a go up, run and stab somebody while you're shooting the rest of his friends with your giant laser arm. And next up is 2 things that I'm gonna just combine together, one of which being a classic and another thing being a semi-improvement on that classic, but without the main thing from that classic. But hey, whatever, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. The main thing being the Taskmaster shield, incredibly durable. It allows him to break through cinder blocks, and obviously this is a great help when trying to kill people, and additionally is possibly stronger than the rest of his armor, and also allowing him some more protective abilities while also allowing him to throw it. Granted, however, the way he's going to hold and throw it, I think we should bring back a classic. Yes, that's right, on his other arm he's going to be using the, I guess, electromagnetic gauntlet thing that he made for his electromagnetic Captain America shield, except this time he's going to be using the Taskmaster shield because it's more durable. However, for branding purposes, I think if he were to use it, I think he should repaint the Taskmaster shield and make it look like his merch shield. But lastly is something that actually hasn't really come out yet at the time of this video, but since it's in production and it's gonna come out, let's be real, it's definitely gonna come out, they're not just gonna abandon it, this is gonna be made by them, which is awesome by the way. I'm gonna give him his lightsaber. In fact, no, I'm gonna give him 2. So even if the repulsor runs out, he can just grab a lightsaber with that arm, and I don't think he'd have to abandon the shield necessarily, but he may have to, but that way he can use the other lightsaber, and he has 2 laser swords, which, with all of this extra stuff, I say he gets through another floor. And so now that we're at the end of the video, I want to analyze with all this gear, could he get all the way to the top of a skyscraper, get through all of the goons and people who are after him, assuming the government doesn't join in protecting the billionaire? Is Hacksmith getting to the top of this building and enacting his revenge for some reason? I'm not entirely sure. His main problem here is numbers. Like, I think in a room of up to 10 people, he actually solos all of them, even if he gets a few bruises or scratches or whatever. But like, once we start dipping into the 20s and 30s, I'm not sure if he'll be able to get through. Granted, maybe he could just give his employees like handguns and have them come with him, but for starters, I don't even know how he'd get those. And also, again, eventually their numbers would slowly die out because they're not wearing the super armor or anything. However, I do think if it's a surprise attack, then he will probably be able to get through all the way to the top of the building and defeat his enemy, who's a random billionaire for some reason. But now that we're at the end of the video, I have something to ask of you. I actually have more videos like this. Now granted, they're mostly about Minecraft YouTubers. In fact, they all are except for this one. But in the future, I'm willing to dabble in some other stuff, if this does well anyway. That said though, I want to know what you think. I take requests. In fact, my last video in this series was a request. I've done individual power scaling, I've done versus battles. If you have any real YouTubers you want me to do, recommend those. If you have any YouTubers who are like Minecraft YouTubers or have some sort of other interesting persona with a bunch of like fictional feats and stuff, I'd be willing to do that as well. And also make sure to tell me if you think Hacksmith should be able to get to the top of the building. Do you think it depends on factors, or do you think he just destroys his enemies? Tell me in the comments below. And without any further ado, do not forget to like and subscribe!